Welcome back to another episode of our award-winning podcast, Smart People Travel Wise, a platform where everyone can learn all things about travel. I'm your host, Tennie Sumague, coming to you from my hometown of Woodside, Queens, New York. Concrete jungle where dreams are made of, because if you can make it here, you really can make it anywhere. We have a great episode ahead of us as me and my guests talk about a very popular travel trend, solo travel. Me and my guests will explore the beauty of solo travel across locally, domestically, and internationally. But before we begin, if you are watching live, please hashtag live. And if you're watching on replay, hashtag replay. Make sure you tell us where you're listening from so we can give you a special shout out. So today's guest is a very handsome man with a killer smile, is an avid traveler, and is also good with numbers. He recently launched his own travel website, Adventures by RL, and is an up-and-coming travel advisor specializing in very cool European destinations and river cruises. Please smash those heart buttons and welcome Ronald Lloveras. Hey, Ronald.
Hey, Tennie. Thank you for having me on the podcast. And I'm very excited for this. First of all, I would like to greet you and all the rest of the teachers out there with a big happy Teachers Appreciation Week from last week. Kudos to you all for doing what you do for the kids of the future. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. You just gave me a shout out because, like, if everyone doesn't know, I am a teacher by profession. I've been teaching for almost 18 years. And also, I'd like to give a shout out to all the nurses, as it is Nurses Appreciation Week. Big heartfelt thanks to all the nurses. Thank you for all that you do, especially my mom, who is a retired nurse. So happy Nurses Appreciation Day, Mom. And to all my friends, who you all know who you are. I can't name all 1,000 of you.
You're pretty much saying congratulations to all of the nurses of the Filipino community.
That's half like the whole Filipino community. Is your mom a nurse, by the way, Ronald?
She's retired, yes.
And it's because our mothers are nurses, we're able to travel, right? Because I think that's really the reason why I was able to travel to places that, you know, people dream of. So let's talk about you instead of your mom, who is a nurse, or my mom. Let's get back to you. So tell us more about yourself, where you're from, and how you got into the travel industry.
So just a little, a bit about myself. I'm actually an auditor for the federal government. I manage a small group of auditors. They're wonderful people to work with. I was born in the Philippines, and I moved here to the US back in October of 1987. So it's, I guess, 34 and a half years now since I've been here. I've lived in Maryland until I moved into DC in 2006. So I'm pretty much a native of the DC area, AKA called DMV area. As for my travel industry, I got into it after reaching out to the former CEO of TravelWise International. His name is Alvin Adriano. I saw him and his posting on Facebook about being a travel advisor. So I took a leap of faith and I reached out to him and we talked about it, and it got me excited for it because of the opportunities that's going to be given to me as a travel advisor and a solo personal traveler myself. So he and I actually went to the same school, the high school, but he was a year older than I was, so he graduated before me. But I love to travel, mostly Europe, some domestic locations. So I thought, why not become a travel advisor? So I just look forward to exploring the various locations in the US or even Europe or Asia. We'll see.
And I agree with you. I think being a travel advisor is a great side hustle because you get to do what I believe that you need to do something that you're passionate about and be able to market that passion to the people of this world or whoever your market is. But let's get back to you and Washington, D.C. It's the nation's capital, of course. It's been a city that I've been to so many times since childhood. But Ronald, I do the same thing in Washington, D.C. I take the megabus or a Greyhound, get off at Union Station, meander around there. Then I head out to the memorials, and then I go to the Smithsonian, and then go home. And that's how many times I've been to Washington, D.C., and it's always the same thing. But I know that there is more to do in Washington, D.C., or in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. Tell us more about what do you like to do in the area?
Oh boy. So yeah, so since been here for about 34, at least 34 years, there's too many things to go check out during the weekends. So what I do need to do is actually get a book of Washington D.C. hotspots. You can get them at a local store or whatever, local bookstore, and kind of check off the little things. But most of the time, those kind of list out the most popular locations where tourists would go to. So for me personally, I'm actually a volunteer tour guide at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. So I would highly recommend for everyone to stop by our facility. It's not only a place of to see the musical and theater performances, but it is the biggest memorial to John F. Kennedy. It's a pretty awesome place. So we also have our National Arboretum located in Northeast DC. So if you or anybody else enjoy being out in nature and seeing beautiful scenery, you should definitely check it out. Let's see, if you're big on social media where you like to post photos like, landscape, trees, gardens, or flowers, this is the place to be because everybody's taking photos and posting it, in Instagram or Facebook or whatever. It's a beautiful, pretty beautiful place. Let's see, another location that is not on everyone's radar is heading out to Virginia, basically. Virginia has a lot of wineries on the west coast of the border area, closer to West Virginia. You can do tours of the wineries. You could do like a wine flight to try them out. But of course, you could do like a wine tasting tour or I guess experience to kind of go over the history of the wineries, how they produce their wine, and how to properly taste the differences, with the various wines, either red or white. There's differences and levels of what type of wine you want to drink. So I think that's it for now because there's so many more things that I could list, but those will be my top three on the bucket list of the DC areas.
That's great. And I feel the same way about New York City. There's so much to do, like outside of the city center, outside of Manhattan. There's stuff to do in Queens. There's stuff to do in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Bronx, New Jersey, Long Island, upstate, everywhere, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. And I feel like, when you kind of take your city for granted sometimes, because that's how I feel about New York. And when I go to DC, and I'm gonna take you as my tour advisor, because on my bucket list, Ronald, I've always wanted to watch a musical or a concert at John F. Kennedy Performing Arts Center. And I am an avid music lover. Like I said in previous podcasts, I studied to be a music teacher, and I remember always watching on YouTube. I believe it was a concert that was hosted by former President Barack Obama, where he had all these guest musicians like Natasha Bedingfield, and I think it was a tribute to Motown. And okay. I remember watching that, and that's been on my bucket list for almost 5 years to watch a concert in John F. Kennedy Center. Now that you are a volunteer tour guide there, I'm gonna take that offer, and you're going to show me around.
I'm on Sunday morning. It's okay from 10 to 1 p.m. So that's the only time I volunteer, but you'll catch me there. So you mentioned, taking granted for the city. Like I try to see as much as I can because it's free. It's going to be there. It's not going anywhere. But for me, when I go to New York, I I oftentimes don't go to the museums because they charge.
That is the drawback of New York City, but you also New York City museums, but you also have to know that there are days when there's admissions for free. So, and
Really?
Met, yes, if you go to the Met, it's actually voluntary donation. So you basically can go to the Met for free. Guggenheim, I believe Guggenheim, I think admissions are free Friday nights. And I've always wanted to, I haven't gone to the Guggenheim yet. I've lived in New York for 32 years and I've never gone there. And it's good to know that Fridays, if you go there Friday afternoons, the admissions are free. Just let me know when you're going to go to New York. And we're going to segue into domestic travel. What are some of your favorite domestic places that you've gone solo?
So similar to my, my local recommendations, I tend to go to locations where you don't expect everyone to go to. Let's see, places that aren't in people's minds. Well, you said local?
Domestic.
Domestic, sorry. Okay. So I would probably go to, again, like I do love to go to New York City, Vegas, LA, San Diego, San Francisco. Those are like my main areas to go to because they're such big cities that there's so many things for me to explore. So I think those are like the top places that I will definitely go to. I do have friends over there that I visit once in a while, but it's not the only reason why they go there. I mean, I love to do solo travels to those locations. So, yeah.
Out of those cities, Ronald, which city stands out to you? What do you love about going into that city? And you could say New York if you want.
I'm not.
Oh, my heart is broken. I can't believe.
Oh no, New York is such an interesting city. But one of the places I do love to go to, and I still want to continue exploring, is LA. It's such a a city full of people with lots of car traffic, but it does offer so much opportunities for exploration. So you have sections in the city for opportunities of discovering what the city can give you. So there's Koreatown. I think there's also a Filipino town. Of course, you got your Hollywood place, to see the actresses and actors. Or the regular downtown LA. If you want to go to the beach, there's Venice Beach. And of course, the best place to go to is Hollywood Hills, where you can see the lifestyles of the rich and famous. So,
well, you can see the lifestyles of the rich and famous in New York too. But I understand why you like LA.
Isn't New York you have to go to Upper West for that though?
There's Upper West Side, Central Park, even what people don't know is there's a lot of shows are shot also in Brooklyn and parts of Queens. Spider-Man, the recent movie with Zendaya and who's that, her boyfriend, do you know the actor?
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, yes. That was actually shot nearby Queens, near where I live. The beginning part was shot at 46th Street, Sunnyside, not too far from where I live in Woodside. And there's parts of that movie that was filmed in Long Island City, Queens. Shout out to all my friends who live out in Long Island City and Sunnyside. Whoop, whoop. Parts of Spider-Man was filmed there. But I know you love LA, and I'm not, I'm not heartbroken as a New Yorker. That's fine. I respect your opinion. Okay, so let's go take a deep dive into international travel, which is the main topic of our podcast episode, is the beauty of solo travel, especially at an international level. And recently I went to Italy for the first time by myself. That was something very, very, it was a life-changing experience for me. I've never traveled internationally by myself. And it's at first it's scary, especially with the ongoing pandemic. You don't know what's going to happen. And also there's these conflicts, this Russia, Ukraine, that it's affecting travel. But you can't let things like that stop you from traveling the world. And what I learned from my travel to Italy recently is self-discovery. And Ruby and Keisha, we all talked about self-discovery. For me, I learned about independence. I also learned that I can show you the world. It's a whole new world, folks, when you travel solo. In comparison to when you travel with friends or family, it's just very different. You're independent, you make your own choices, you could get lost and people will not get mad at you. You have fun. I had so much fun getting lost in Cuomo, the streets of Cuomo. And I remember going there. And folks, do not ever do this when you explore a town or city. Please do not take your luggage with you because that was so annoying about me exploring a small town like Cuomo is carrying my luggage, my roll-on, carry-on, and those cobbled streets. I had to make a pit stop every time. My luggage was so annoying, even though I didn't have much in that luggage. But when you explore a small town city like Cuomo, like there's just something magical about it. It's just like you're so amazed about these small streets and these stores and the way just the people. I was people watching. And your first time traveling was also traveling solo internationally. Is also in an Italian small town. And share us that experience, Ronald.
So I actually went to Verona after a river cruise. I met up with a friend for 45 minutes for dinner, and then the rest of the entire week I was by myself. Now, why Verona? Well, why not? For one of my puppies is actually, his name is Romeo. He's actually sleeping right now. So
Romeo, where art thou, Romeo?
You're calling him over. Oh my God. Romeo,
show us who Romeo is. Here.
Here he is.
Hey, Romeo. Ironically, my late father's name is Romeo too.
He's probably thinking, why are you picking me up? But yeah, so it's a small city. Not a lot of people, think about going there. Milan is on the west side of that, and then you got Venice. I went to Venice for a one-day trip. It was a small city, and I was hoping that it didn't have that many tourists out there visiting. And I was right. There were a couple of pockets where everybody was going, such as the Juliet's balcony, of course, and then Romeo's house, which nobody was looking for anyway. But it was a pretty cool city to go to. I just didn't have to worry about the crowds, and I just walked aimlessly throughout the city. So it was beautiful. It was a great experience.
Yeah, and the beauty of walking into a small town city like Verona, and for me, for the Como, is that you really get to enjoy the character, or I should say the personality of that small town. You got to see something. Verona, which is the town of the timeless classic Romeo and Juliet. There's also I know a popular amphitheater in Verona, which is on my bucket list. And there's just something magical of when you just stroll around a small town city. And what significance did it have on you walking through the streets of Verona?
It was nerve-wracking, actually. I'm okay to travel by myself in US cities, but traveling to Verona, it was a little difficult because I don't speak Italian whatsoever. I don't understand it. I can't speak a single word of it. So traveling by myself, not knowing how to speak a language, I was really afraid to go to a store or a restaurant, even though I needed to eat or something like that. So I just had to rely on electronics to get things translated for me. But it didn't stop me. I was able to point to certain things or try to at least pronounce Italian words, and they know what I want and all that stuff. So
Like,
they
va
can tell,
bene.
they know, and they can tell I'm
Forza
probably
Italiano.
so prego, thank you.
Exactly.
But,
Ciao.
yeah.
Of all places in the world to do your solo travel experience, why Verona?
Why Verona? Well, why not? So for one, that was like one of the locations that I wanted to go to. Since I was getting off of a river cruise, Italy was on the list to go. It's not too far, it's not too close, and I love Italy in general. I've been to Rome, but I wanted something different. So Verona was definitely one of the places that I wanted to go to. I found out that a friend of mine was actually stationed there in the Air Force, who was like, he lived about 45 minutes away. So I said, all right, let's do this, explore a new city that I've never been to, and, see my friend. Two, Milan and Venice are not too far away from each other, and they were easily accessible by a train. But I was only able to go to Venice at one point. Milan is on a later trip, maybe.
Yes, and it's on the west side. Verona is closer to Venice.
You were in Milan, so I seeing your post about Milan, I was like, I want to go there.
Yeah,
So,
it's very underrated, Ronald. And even there's so many small towns that you can go to. I mean, I went to Lake Como, and that's just one part. And then there's Bergamo, and then you could go down to Genoa and Portofino, and there's all these great small towns that you can explore in Italy, where you can just immerse in the culture, act like a localist. And it's really important, Ronald, that you know at least a little bit of Italian there, even though in Italy you will find a lot of native Italians that speak English. So let's do a little bit. I'm going to teach you a little bit of Italian here. Or let me ask you, how much Italian did you know when you went to Verona?
0. I didn't know anything. I mean, was it si, no, prego, ciao, or buongiorno?
And basically, Ronald, that's pretty much all you need to know. And all you need to know nowadays is all you need to know how to say is parli Italiano or parli inglese. And if they say si or no, and all you have to do is take out that Google Translate and translate what you want to say in English and have it translated in Italian, and they will then just say it, even if it's broken Italian. That's the beauty. They will respect you for that, Ronald. And anyone who's listening, if you're planning on a trip to Italy, wherever, north, south, central, it's good to know a little bit of Italian, but most Italians do speak English. Now, about your first time on this adventure, was it a life-changing event for you? What did you learn about yourself when you went to Verona?
It was definitely life-changing because of the fact that I'm a very introverted person. I'm okay with traveling domestically to different cities in the US. But traveling solo, not knowing the language, of course, was very overwhelming. I taught myself like, okay, how am I going to get around, or how am I going to ask for, a Coke or a pizza or something in a restaurant? But, luckily, there were some touristy places that did, have English speaker workers. But since I like to go in the unbeaten path of places, especially in Verona, I went to the smaller cafes where they did not know how to speak English whatsoever, which is fine. I didn't expect them to. I stayed, and I still enjoyed the time spent there. So it's getting out of my own bubble. It was the part that kind of pushed me to explore more of Verona, and I mean in Italy in general as well. So I think if I get myself to go to, I don't know, Sicily, or like you said, Genoa or Milan, maybe I'll be more comfortable and, exploring more and not worrying about my inability to speak Italian.
And I think the greatest part from my own experience, and it's not because I studied Italian for 6, 7 years in high school and in college, and I got the chance to study abroad for a month in Florence. But when I did my first, when I was researching and where I wanted to go for my first time solo travel, the reason why I chose Italy is it's also not only a place or a culture that I'm familiar with, but it's just exciting when you learn about the different places, and there's just there's different small towns that represent something that we know. Like for you, Verona, it's known as the place where Romeo and Juliet was taking place. And then if there's other towns like Parma, what's Parma known for? Parmesan cheese, Moderno, balsamic vinegar. I mean, there's so much to do. And like, we know so much about Italian foods, and what we don't know as travelers are the different small towns where it's actually originated. And that was one of the things that I was so excited about in my choice of first travel. And I do recommend that if you're traveling for the first time, I do recommend you go to Italy wherever it is, whether it's a big town, a big city like Milan or Rome or Florence, or a small town like what Ronald did here is Verona, because he went there. You went there, Ronald, because you had some connection with the city that and then when you actually saw it, I mean, when you actually saw Verona, were you just captivated of how
It was beautiful because I stayed on one side of the city, and the city's actually kind of split in the middle by a river. So each time I wanted to go to the main city, I always have to cross the river. And so I was in the suburbia part. And then once you cross over, that's like the downtown area. It's a small city, and I didn't think it was that small. And so, having checked out Rome back in 2011, it's a big city. Everything's different. You got modernized building, all that. But going to Verona, you've got some really historical places. Even the place you stayed or the hotels are in this, massive places that are just full of history. You got the ancient Rome ruins underneath your streets. It's pretty awesome. And so it has its own beauty in such a small space.
Yeah, that's the phenomenal part of all the towns in Italy. There's history, and they will always say, if you ask a local tour guide, or they'll know the history. In 1886 this was established, or in 1496, or whatever. Genoa, for example, guess who is from Genoa? Christopher Columbus.
Oh. Okay. You're taking me back to
salami. I'm just saying, Christopher, you can connect Genoa with Christopher Columbus and salami. All right, Genoa salami. You've all seen it in supermarkets, right? You. How many of us love salami sandwiches? I do.
They are pretty tasty. A lot of people use them in their charcuterie boards.
Yeah. See, there's always some kind of special connection with Italian small cities. Oh, another one was Como. Everybody knows about Lake Como thanks to George Clooney, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go there, is because I remember I was with my friend Criel. Again, Criel, shout out to you. I've talked about you. I've mentioned about him in my past couple of podcasts. He was with me when I went to Como. And the first thing when we stepped out of the train, we're like, Tita George, where's Tita George? Uncle George, where are you? Where's your villa? And so, yes, one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Como is, because George Clooney has a villa. But when you step into a city like how you experience in Verona, there's more to a small city other than, say, Romeo and Juliet. And like Como, there's more than George Clooney there. Now, let's go into what have you learned as a solo traveler? What are some of the amazing lessons learned when you traveled solo?
For me, I think that I learned that I can't limit my potential when it comes to travel. Now that I am, I try to do solo travel. I try not to do the usual touristy places or locations during peak times, because it depends on when you go. If you go to peak season, you're going to be competing with all the rest of the people who are trying to get into certain places, and it's going to be just jam packed. So I try not to go with the flow with everybody else, and I try to go to other places that nobody usually goes to. So also getting out of my comfort level or comfort bubble per se, since since I am by myself, I don't know the local language. I push myself to try new things. For example, Spain is still on my bucket list, and I wanted to go to this festival. I think it's called the La Tomatina, which is like tomato festival.
Oh, yes. That's you're in a bunch of tomatoes and you're just throwing tomatoes at each other. Yes, I
version for adults, but you're throwing tomatoes. So I mean, it's an event that everybody want to go to.
Yes.
And everybody goes with a group of people. But as a solo travel, what kind of experience will I have if I do go there by myself? I don't know.
I mean, you'll have the liberty to throw tomatoes at anybody and anyone. I always want, honestly, Ronald, when I'm driving in New York, sometimes I want to throw tomatoes at these drivers who come at me for no reason. So all the more when you go to something like a tomato festival, you get the opportunity to throw tomatoes and probably eat it too.
Yeah, and nobody will be mad at you because you are in a festival all about throwing tomatoes at each other. So, I mean, it looks fun from all the travel documentaries that I've seen about that place and that event. So it's one of those places I definitely want to go to. Who knows?
Yes, and I'm gonna add that to my bucket list because I love tomatoes, and all the more throwing tomatoes at people, that's even a better travel experience to have. Now, what's next for you in terms of travel? What are you looking? What's your next journey, and what are your plans as a travel advisor?
So since my niche is actually in Europe, European land tours, as well as river and sea cruises. My first to go to list is Ireland, actually, and maybe combining with Scotland. I recently booked my cousin, who is actually going to Ireland at the end of June. She's taking one of her sons there. It's a 6 to 8, 5 night tour from Dublin down to the southwest coast of Ireland and then back to Dublin. I want to do something longer, but I want to see when is the best date for me to go. Since going through the certification program of learning about Ireland, it got me so excited and wanted me to go there more because I've never been to Ireland or Scotland, for Pete's sakes. So that's definitely going to be on my list. And also, let's see, what else can I do? Let's see, maybe Machu Picchu in Peru.
Yes, a beautiful wonder of the world. I haven't been there, Ronald. That's also been on my bucket list. And ironically, I was reading a book. One of the books I'm reading is by John Maxwell, and it's about communication. And he actually mentioned a trip that he went. He mentioned about Machu Picchu, and it's a good thing that you brought it up. And he wanted to. John Maxwell was talking about how he's about connecting with people, and he was trying to connect with the the tour guide that he was on his tour with his wife and a couple of friends to Machu Picchu. And it turned out to be probably one of his worst experiences, all because the tour operator wasn't really connecting with him or the people on the tour. He was very bland. He called it bland, or I don't really remember, but he turned that experience. It was something that he looked forward to, and it went sour because his tour guide wasn't effectively communicating. But I'm sure just to let you know, I'm letting you know, make sure if you ever go to Machu Picchu, you have to have some kind of good tour guide to connect with you and also to learn the history. And apparently John Maxwell didn't have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those places I've been wanting to go to. I mean, even though it's not really under my niche. I back in December 2019, I actually went on a cruise to the west coast of South America. we went through Peru, a port, and then one of the stops, the excursion that they offered was a trip to Machu Picchu. But that was like, I think, an extra of $3,500, and I couldn't afford that, of course. But the people that I talked to who went on the excursion had a wonderful time. So I'm getting more jealous of people who's been there and all the photos that they've taken. And it's just such a beautiful area, even though it's just on top of the mountain. It's just trying to put yourself in the lives of people who grew up in that village. It makes you wonder, what was life like back then? Those temples were buried in, by trees and shrubberies until somebody discovered them.
And that's amazing. That's what's so beautiful about travel, is it's the history and the
Right.
culture of a city, of a town, and also the food. I love Peruvian food, Ronald.
So
What's
good.
it, pollo a la brasa with green sauce? Yeah, that's also on my bucket list. Machu Picchu and trying real Peruvian chicken.
Not talking about food because you're making me hungry now.
I'm always hungry. I'm always dreaming about food. Salami, we talked about salami, Parmesan cheese. Now we're talking about Peruvian chicken. But now we're going to segue into your travel niche.
Okay.
Does your travel niche best describe your travel personality?
I think so, because I'm a very inquisitive person. So like I said, I mentioned earlier, my focus is on European tours and sea or river cruises. I love to learn about different countries' histories, culture, food, and of course the language. So hopefully my niche will be able to take me to those places where I can learn more about those things. I have a list of places I've been to Europe, but there are a ton more places that I have yet to explore. And so the personality of me of trying to be an explorer is definitely going to give me that opportunity as a travel advisor. So for sea and river cruises, there's a part of me where I like to go on vacations that's very relaxing. So cruises, you're just on a ship and you're just going port to port. It's very low frills, relaxing. Everything's just given to you right there. Everything, all the food, the entertainment, the drinks, it's all there in one place. I don't have to worry about transportation from port to port to port in different locations. It's just there for me. So I do like the sunsets or the sunrises, on the board, on the ship. So it's a beautiful, serene, quiet time for me when I do wake up 5 o'clock in the morning to look for the sunrise, and then go to around 6 or 7 for the sunset. It's a beautiful scenery. I do like that.
And Ronald, I've never been on any kind of cruise, river cruise, or.
You live in New York. There's so many ports there.
I know. And guess what? It's because I went fishing on a boat a long time ago in California, and I got seasick. So I actually had this phobia of going on a cruise. I eat so much that I'm afraid that I'm gonna vomit.
It's totally different. Being on a big cruise ship, you barely feel any of the movement. The only times that I felt it was if I was going through a storm. That's really it. But that was kind of like a smaller ship. But nowadays you got the Norwegian or the Royal Caribbean big cruises, you barely feel anything. So
you I'm excited. And I'm excited to go on my first cruise. So I'm going to have you plan it. I've always wanted to do a river cruise in Europe, maybe along the Danube or the Seine River. So
river cruises is definitely a great opportunity for you to test out your seasickness. You don't feel it because it goes really slow. And it's just a river cruise. They don't have the waves or anything like that. So that'll be a perfect opportunity for you to go on a cruise. So
I'm excited, and I'm gonna ask you. So there's a lot of things that you're gonna do for me besides you're gonna plan my river cruise. You're also gonna take me a tour around DC from a localist. I'm gonna take that offer. You're gonna give me that. I want a solo tour, just me and you, and around John F. Kennedy Performing Arts Center. So, and in return, Ronald, you could come up to New York, and it's going to be your favorite domestic destination over LA.
Pinky swear, pinky swear.
Let's do that. Now, is there anything else you would like to add or say before we end this podcast?
So as a travel advisor, I just, want to give people advice when you're booking your next vacation or adventure. Don't limit yourself too much. You can do some limit because, people do have budget, and I totally understand that. Think about the location thoroughly, and think about your budget and how the budget and the location can fit together. Everyone has a bucket list, but it's not always achievable because you have certain limitations, of course. Do some research before you say, I want to go here, but you don't know what's really, what you're really looking for. Once you get to a location, don't go to the main restaurants located in the main roads where everybody else goes to these areas. Look for the those are food traps. So you want to go to the the less road, the road less traveled by Ernest Hemingway. Go look for the authentic places down on the different alley or different road where you don't see a lot of people going to. Those are where you can actually find the cuisine, the authentic cuisine, where it's actually made by a grandmother or whoever, and it's more delicious than the tourist trap of those restaurants. So, in terms of budget, give yourself some wiggle room. We can't always get the perfect vacation if you're limited to a budget. You gotta think about what type of food, activities, desserts, especially if you go to Italy, you gotta have a lot of gelato on a daily basis. So you gotta do a gelato budget.
Yes, you do have to do. And I know that because I was on a gelato budget, and I was told not to buy gelato in the city, but to go outside the city center for the best gelato. And that was probably the best advice I ever got.
You know what? What I did in Verona was I actually went into the supermarkets and bought gelato there, which were actually cheaper, and they tasted the same.
That's a good point. Next time I go to a supermercato, I'm going to buy every kind of gelato there is. Limonata, pistachio, what else? The hazelnut, Nutella, you name it, I'll eat it. And thank you, Ronald, for sharing that. So, because, now I know how to budget for gelato.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, in terms of budget, so if you limit yourself because of a low budget, then your whole experience in that location, your vacation or adventure, will also be a low budget experience. And so, you might kick yourself in the rear, if you figure out that, that wasn't the best experience because I couldn't do certain things that I wanted to because I was limiting myself in my expenditures. But you got to live a little. You are there for only a short time, unless I guess you can limit yourself if you do plan to come back again. Mm-hmm. There's always the next time. People say there's always the next time, but maybe next time you want to go to, I don't know, Germany or Amsterdam or whatever, and those are different experiences as well. So
yes, and every city in Europe, and even every city in the country just has a different style and personality. And different kinds of foods. It varies during in each region, and that's what's so beautiful about Europe, especially. It's just it's a magical place to go, and it should be on everybody's bucket list destination. Well, Ronald, thank you. I'm so happy that you were able to join this podcast. Thank you for your stories, your tips. And everybody, check out Adventures by RL, where he will help you plan the best European destinations and river cruises, because I know I'm going to have him plan out my river cruise vacation. Thank you, Ronald, for joining.
Thanks for having me, Tennie.
And thank you again to all our viewers and supporters. Without your support, this would not be possible. So make sure you tune in every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Pacific, for another episode of Smart People Travel Wise. I'm Tennie Sumague. Take care and see you next time.